Welcome to another episode of Love Selling, Hate Sales. Today, I am joined by Esben Friis-Jensen, who is the co-founder and chief growth officer at Userflow. Esben, thanks for joining the show. Excited to have you.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you have an interesting story. You co-founded Userflow. You started as a product-led growth type of organization.
Yeah.
Sounds like you made a transition to sales-led.
Yeah, so that in my old organization, Cobalt. So prior to Userflow, I co-founded another company called Cobalt together with three. I'm originally from Denmark, three other Danish guys, and we basically started this kind of cybersecurity company that does what someone would. We kind of framed the category as pen test as a service, which is basically penetration testing as a service. So it was basically a SaaS approach to penetration testing or security testing. And in the beginning, we were, as many startups are, a very product-led organization, very focused on the product, self-service, all that stuff. But as we grew, we kind of became more and more sales-led to get bigger deals, but also because we were entering a market where we were competing against service companies, right? And they were doing high touch,
white glove service.
Exactly. That's a problem many SaaS companies face, that they are often replacing a service industry that tends to do high service, high touch service. So you kind of end up sometimes becoming almost a service organization instead of a software organization in many ways, right? But over the years, we realized we had to become more product-led again, and we went on a journey to basically become more product-led. And that really piqued my interest in that whole movement that was starting at that time. That was like around 2 years ago, of product-led growth. And in the end, I actually I was so interested in the space that I decided to join my co-founder, Sebastian, on starting Userflow, which is basically an in-app onboarding builder so allowing non-developers to build in-app onboarding product tours and surveys. So you can basically do more automated onboarding and thereby have a more product-led approach where the customer onboards themselves, they learn about the product themselves, and ideally ends up buying if it's like a free trial or something like that. So I'm super excited about product-led growth. I think it's definitely the future for software as a service, and very, very excited about it.
Well, it's definitely a hot topic right now, right? I think a lot of folks are struggling with, how does PLG fit in? If I already have an established sales organization, do they have some sort of synergy with one another? Am I just throwing everything I've done for the past however long out? So what are your thoughts, having made that transition a couple of times, being in product-led, having to go into a sales to compete with the service industries, and then back into product-led with Userflow? What are some of the things that you might be able to offer people to start thinking about around how they integrate sales?
Yeah, I think what has happened and why it's becoming more popular again the last 2 years is, I think SaaS has become so dominant now, right? That everybody knows software as a service, right? So it's not like SaaS has matured, right? And what that means is we can start going a bit more into the product route. We don't have to compete against the service companies. We're often competing against other SaaS companies now, right? And that means you can now allow people to do what was actually intended, that they just use your software and don't need to always speak with a salesperson or customer success to use your product. So I think really product-led growth is this kind of mindset that you always think product first in everything you do, right? It's really a culture in your company where you think product first in everything you do. So if you are the marketing team, you think, okay, how do we build a traction model that involves the product? If you are in the sales or customer success and product, you think about how do we build a sales and customer success model that involves the product and where the product does most of the legwork, really. Having said that, it's not really that product-led growth is reducing the need to have sales and customer success involved in certain aspects, but it's not removing the need. I would say it's changing the role of sales and customer success to basically be a bit different. And I think it's definitely something that it's still a journey that many companies are going through and trying to figure out what does that actually mean, right? For me, it's really about in a product-led model. So in the old sales-led model, you were always like this, right? Go to a SaaS site, book a demo.
Yeah.
You maybe talk to an AE, or maybe even you speak with an SDR.
Exactly.
Then you have to do another call with an AE.
It's clumsy.
Then you have multiple meetings, and then you get, maybe when you make a decision, then you get to try the product, but you get onboarded by a customer success manager. And so it's a lot of meetings and a lot of the product is not front and center, right? And in a product-led model, you're putting the product first and center. So you typically would maybe have a free trial or freemium or some sort of experience with the product that the users can try. And then they can kind of sometimes end up buying without speaking with anybody, or sales and or customer success or whoever you have in that role will step in and support that buying journey, right? But the product becomes the first experience with your product. Basically, it's not a meeting; it's the product itself. So the way I look at sales role in this is really to be a bit more, how can you put it, reactive and data driven, right? It's reactive, more like data driven. You have to be like, if you have like 100 users who signs up, right? Let's say maybe 20% or 30% of them will just buy self-service, right? I'm just making up numbers right now. They'll buy self-service. They don't even need to speak with anybody. And then you will have some that will reach out themselves, and they will kind of, reach out to you, and in that way it becomes like a sales process. Sales gets involved because they're actively reaching out to you. But often what they reach out with is really questions, right? It becomes a whole other conversation, because they're reaching out with concrete questions about like the product. Can it do this? Can it fulfill this scenario, and so on? So it actually becomes a much better conversation instead of like doing a generic demo and then talking about that, right? It becomes an actual conversation about use cases, and stuff like that, which is actually better for sales, right? Because then you can better sell those use cases and present the product. And then the last bucket, I would say, is the ones that don't end up buying themselves, and also don't reach out. And for them, you can say some of those are still potential buyers, and maybe their sales can do some data analysis, or you can use tools to look at, did they show some kind of buying intent in the product, despite them never ending up buying. That justifies that we should maybe give them a bit of a push, right? Reach out to them manually, maybe on LinkedIn or whatever, to get them engaged, right? So there you can say sales can go in and be that extra touch of actually reaching out directly because this customer showed some kind of buying intent. But in general, you leave it up to the customer a bit more. To actually decide how they want to approach this. And it's not so kind of pushy.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a trend within the marketplace, right? Of looking at how do we become more customer-centric, more buyer-centric, focusing on them and their needs versus our needs as an organization to sell, and grow, right? I do think it's an interesting balance. And I like your idea of you've got people that'll self-select and continue to do pure product led. Then you've got this group of people who are going to reach out and ask for some specific questions around use cases and product. But then I do think there's a lot of opportunity probably for marketing and sales both to get really good at data analysis, because what you described to me seems like a huge opportunity to gather insights about an organization. And I'm thinking about this when you go up market, right? Like you're probably going to start seeing trends within individuals in the enterprise who might be one-off users of a platform. This is just an example, right? Maybe maybe not happen every time, but how can you analyze those trends as a marketing and sales organization to then bring insights into the executive leadership of that group who might buy your product, right? So that you can create more of a white glove sales experience that's solving a problem versus just, hey, I saw a bunch of people are using our product. Should we talk, right? That's where I think that we can get a little bit more interesting, and having the data to back that up is tough.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, data is a big problem. I think there's a lot of startups right now trying to build solutions that will bring data to salespeople.
Yeah, exactly.
And marketing. I mean, data has always been there for product people, right? Data is like a product developers. They use data, but even for them, it's kind of often it's not very well done, right? There's very few organizations that actually does a good job handling data, but sales and marketing are known to be not very, they're data driven in the sense of conversion, like these kind of classic sales metrics and marketing metrics, like MQLs, SQL, all this stuff, conversion rates, but they're not data driven when it comes to like, how are customers using your product? Like, what is it they do inside your product? What is it how do they use it, right? And adjust accordingly. I think that's a big gap, and that's something that will come with product-led growth. As you become more product-focused, you also have to merge product and sales closer together, so that those kind of analytics sales needs to become more knowledgeable about product analytics and understand how users are using the product. In my experience, even in a sales-led model in Cobalt, the best AEs were the ones who understood the use cases, understood the product.
Absolutely.
Like if there was a question about the product, they didn't have to go and ask a solutions engineer, how do I do this, right? They really knew the product inside out. And if the customer had a use case, they could say, yeah, that's how you do it, because that shows integrity. It doesn't show integrity that you can't answer that question and you need somebody technical to answer it, right? So I think product-led growth is only gonna enforce that even more, right? It requires that salespeople step up their game to become more product-driven and understanding the customer's use cases and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best people are always going to go figure it out, right? They're going to have the want to go out and connect the dots and be the best they can be. But then how do you scale that across an organization? What you're talking about in terms of data. And I think marketing and sales in general wants to be data driven, but they only have access to so much for the most part, right? You typically get a CRM, maybe a marketing automation platform, and maybe a data warehouse that you're laying over some sort of BI or analytics, right? And that's kind of where it starts and stops. Organizations have a hard time with that connectivity where all the silos live. The silos live in product, they live in sales, they live in marketing, they live in finance. There's all these different places where really good data lives for your customer that you can use to be better informed as you go to market, whether it's through sales, whether it's through marketing, however it might be. And I think that the better we get at creating that connectivity, the better we can scale what you're talking about, right? There's just a missing piece for most organizations.
Yeah, I definitely agree. What I'm seeing is now there's a new category of startups, as I said, they call themselves, they haven't fully defined the category yet, but some call them product-led sales, others call them product-led revenue or whatever. But it's basically, right now it's like add-ons to CRMs, right? It's like something that pulls in all the product data, combines it with CRM data, and then triggers certain like things. There's this concept in product-led growth called a PQL, product qualified lead.
Okay.
And these tools are really about highlighting when do we have a product qualified lead, so sales can kind of reach out to the right product qualified leads. That's the other thing, because some product qualified leads are just going to buy themselves, and you don't want sales to necessarily butt in or annoy them, right? You just want them to go and buy. But there are certain product qualified leads, the last bucket that I talked about, where sales needs to be involved, like needs to guide them to actually buy in the end, right? So there are tools like that that are becoming that's a growing industry. I've actually written an article because I think there's a need for something even more dramatic than that. I think there's a need for a software as a service CRM.
Okay.
I think we need to get, let's see if HubSpot or somebody will do it. But other than that, I think there's a need for a new player to come in and actually build a software as a service B2B CRM, right? Today with Salesforce and HubSpot, they're like legacy solutions.
For sure.
They were built for another era. They were not built for software as a service. And today, you can mention many things, but product data is one of, they don't do very well with handling product data.
No,
secondly,
for sure.
They don't do very well handling subscription-based models and usage-based models, which is like the most popular pricing models in SaaS, right? So I think there's a big need for SaaS CRM. So I hope somebody will take it even further than just these like product-led revenue tools. Maybe one of them will do it and actually build a true competitor to a Salesforce, but focused on the SaaS space.
That's a great concept. And even beyond just the idea of being able to pull in better data and better insights from product, having a better user experience on the front end for the sellers. And I think that would help to drive a better customer experience, right? The whole idea is to get back to serving your customer better. So I think it's a great idea. So hopefully we can put the charge out. Salesforce, HubSpot, Marketo, what do you got? What can you help us tap into the product data better?
I agree. You've seen Dooley, right? Dooley has come in, and what they're doing is just like building a nice UI UX on top of Salesforce, right? Which is kind of silly. But I think it's that's a good change, right? It makes it easier to use. It makes it more modern. But the Salesforce object model is just broken. It doesn't fit with the modern SaaS world. It's built for another time, right? And to really build a great product, I think you need to change the object model to be a bit different, more fitting with a SaaS model. And it's interesting, now I talk a lot about SaaS, right? But it really, if you look at the world, like the car industry is also becoming SaaS, right?
Very product-led,
so all these industries are becoming software as a service, really, or subscription-based models. And these CRMs are not equipped to really handle that. That's why you end up buying a lot of like add-on solutions to handle these use cases, right? Like Stripe and whatever, ChatMogul, these kind of tools.
Then you wind up building a Frankenstack, and it becomes even harder for them to talk to one another.
Exactly.
So given that the audience for this show is primarily sales and sales leadership, in your model, how does compensation change for salespeople? Does it change a lot?
Yeah, no, I think in general, and we haven't come that far. This is still the early stages, right? But I think in general, the organization needs to change completely, right? Okay. I've been a bit of an advocate. Does sales and customer success even need to be two different roles in a product-led organization? Could that just be one role called a product expert or whatever you want to call them, right? Sure. Because they end up becoming more somebody who guides the customer through the product, right? So they can make a better buying decision. So that's interesting to me. But yeah, compensation-wise, yes, you have to think about how do you handle a model where you're not kind of incentivizing sales to butt in when they're not supposed to butt in, right? They're not supposed to be involved right now. I think one thing you will see is you will give sales a longer time to earn their commission.
Sure.
And you've already seen that in some usage-based SaaS businesses. And I think as product-led becomes more popular, usage-based pricing is going to be more and more popular.
Right.
And when it then comes to commission, it's hard to give commission upfront when it's usage-based because you might have a customer who starts with a very
it's going to be consumption-based
small amount, and then they grow to like becoming $1 million account. Right. And you wanna kind of give the salesperson some credit for not just the initial sell, but also what comes after that, right? I think the commission model has to kind of be aligned with that somehow. That you honor that they actually were part of creating that customer who ended up buying for a lot of money. So I don't think anybody has found the perfect model yet, but it's something where you increase the duration of how long a salesperson's commission can be earned. I think is one area. But yeah, in general, like this is like a big, as I said, a big org change, right? I even have like ideas where I see product ending up owning a revenue number, right? Like the product function owning revenue, because if they are responsible for building a product that needs to convert customers, right? They should also be measured on that revenue that it generates then. So maybe that's also another future where product actually owns the revenue number and not just sales and customer success.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting concept. I think that there's certainly advocates out there for shaking up the current models in sales and taking away high commissions, lower bases, and moving up bases and things like that. So I think there's a lot of levers that you could potentially pull as you think about it.
Yeah, maybe even commission will go away if you make it very product focused, right? And very like you really think about. It's more like a job where you are like, now I make it sound boring, but it's more like you're a product expert, right? So you don't it's not about selling. It's not about pushing a sale. It's about helping a customer buy, right? So it's more customer success in many ways, right? The sales process.
Yeah, I think that would open the door certainly to a different type of individual, right? And create roles that I think attract a lot of individuals and maybe would detract some others. So it could certainly change the game a little bit in terms of how organizations are structured.
Agreed.
I'm curious to get your thoughts on, so you think of a pretty common scenario, right? You're a startup, you're product led, you're getting all these users on the platform, you're starting to generate revenue, and then you're looking to go raise funds, right? You're going to go out and you're going to get a series A, B, C, whatever it may be. And then there always becomes that inflection point when someone says, well, we need to go up market, we need to go enterprise, right?
Yeah.
How do you think, do you think that this type of concept will scale into a big enterprise type of sale?
Yeah. I think companies have already shown that's possible.
Okay.
A lot of enterprises today, the way they buy is that the end user has a lot of power. They will come to your product and they will try it. I actually see a lot more empowerment in big enterprises than what I see in like medium-sized businesses. Medium-sized businesses, for some reason, have a much tougher rules about what people can go and try and buy. So you see the small businesses where typically the decision maker is the one trying the product and also buying the product.
Yeah.
Then medium-sized businesses, there's a lot more like, it's a bit more discussions and who actually owns the decision around tooling. And then you have in enterprises, you actually empower a lot of the true end users to go and trial products, typically through some kind of process maybe, but they still go and trial your product. And then they have to then advocate to the higher ups that, okay, this is something we should do. Sure. So we've seen that with Userflow. We get a lot of enterprises actually signing up. And these are like UX people, so you can say not managers or directors, but like actual users, senior UX people, right? And they will use the product, and then they will say, "Oh, this is great. Let me show this to more people in my organization." But then what ends up happening is, in an enterprise, you cannot avoid. I think there are certain cases where they will just swipe a credit card, and then they will, buy for just a team, for instance, right?
Depending on the value, right?
Exactly. They will buy like maybe just for their team a small package.
Sure.
And for that, you can then go from that point and then go in and sell more, right? Like upsell, upgrade. But if they are looking to buy already from the beginning, looking to buy a bigger package, you will also inevitably have the sales process. I think the thing about enterprises is a lot of them are forced to do contracts, forced to do actual procurement. And that means a sales process is inevitably going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they will actually reach out to you and say, yeah, I need to go through this procurement process. And the thing is that you should not allow that via self-service, right? You should just say like, we have the self-service model where you can swipe a credit card, or we have this enterprise model where you reach out to us and where we do a proper sales process and make that expensive. Like these people need to be charged for having, complex procurement processes. That's expensive for you. It should also be expensive for them, right? Yeah. And I think that's important because for enterprises, what seems expensive, especially as a SaaS business, what seems expensive to you is not expensive for them, right?
That's true.
They will still see it as not being expensive at all, right? They're used to paying those kind of prices you might set. I think you can double or triple the price just for having a contract, and they wouldn't mind, right? And I think that's interesting.
What I love about that.
In that case, you will have a sales process where you have to talk to them more. You can discuss, do they have more use cases? Should we actually do another kind of contract here and so on?
Right.
So I think that sales process is more likely to happen, but it still starts with that initial trial in many ways.
Yeah, what I love about that model is that if you take it into the enterprise, right, and you get this group of users that goes in and swipes the corporate Amex for their team, and then they decide to roll it out, you've almost got this proof of concept built in that you can then take the benchmarks from that specific group, build a business case out, and then when you get into that procurement process, you have some ammo that you can then use as a seller to go in and make that expanded contract sale, right? Because you're going to get into a little bit of a, if you start getting into a bigger enterprise, you get procurement involved and you've got a team that bought it for, let's say, $30 a seat, right? And they were able to swipe the Amex to do it. And now you go through this process and you say, well, it's going to be $100 a seat to scale this across the enterprise. You're going to start to get some pushback. So I think your sales team is going to have to get really good at taking that initial use case, extrapolating that out, building a business case around it for the enterprise in order to get through that procurement process to get the rates that you're maybe talking about.
Yeah. So I think you skipped out for a second. I agree 100%. I think really that's the power of product led is you get that ammo, right?
Right.
And what sales should know, and that's also why I sometimes want sales to be closer to product. Because salespeople, now I'm saying this in the nicest way possible, they have a tendency to please the customer, right? Let's please the customer. They are complaining about something. Let's give them what they want just so I can close this deal, right? But in this scenario, it's actually, it's really the true challenger sale, right? It's like, you love this product. Why do you need a lower price? You love this. You're not gonna go to another product. You already bought into this product. You love it, right? We know you love it. And that's what I want salespeople to know when they go into those negotiations is like, they love the product. So you have all the ammo you want to win this discussion around pricing, right? And you're not, typically SaaS businesses are always underpricing themselves, right? They are not expensive. Only few players in the market are. But it's not typically, especially as younger SaaS companies, they are not expensive. They could raise their prices a lot more, right? So I think that's something where another great sales quality is to be able to understand you're selling something very valuable.
Absolutely.
Don't underestimate that, right? And by them seeing that the customer is actually using the product prior to them going into the sales conversation, that should be more than enough to see that they love it, right?
What's great is you're using the product. I mean, you're taking product market fit, right? The first absolute that you have to have in any business is product market fit. and you're using that to establish the ideal customer profile on the front end because they're self-selecting, right? They're coming to you. Marketing is driven around the product. It's driven around that buyer, that ideal customer profile, getting them to leverage the product from the get-go, whether it's in a free trial, a paid use case, whatever it may be. And then that just gives sales so much ammo, to your point, to say, oh man, you're a great fit for this. It's obvious. You're scaling. You started with one person. Now you've got 15. Let's build this out in a smart way. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah. And I think it also goes back to the one thing I always told salespeople in Cobalt, but also procurement is not the one making the decision.
No, they are definitely not. Yeah.
The end users, if they already made the decision, procurement is just there to try to get a better price or whatever, right?
Totally.
But they already made the decision. So it's not going to go away because you challenge them a bit on the pricing, right? You might, if you challenge them, there's of course balances to this, right? But still, it's not, they made that decision. They love your tool. So it's not gonna, you should go in with that in your mind when you go negotiate.
That's great ammo for salespeople for sure.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how this evolves. Hopefully you can maybe have you back on the show in a year and you can tell me how it's evolved at the company. I'm curious to see how org structure changes, how comp plans maybe change, how the profile of your sellers change. I think those things could all be very different under this model. And I'm curious to see it evolve for sure.
No, I agree. I think it's going to be exciting years coming. Product-led is this buzzword, right? But it starts to, it's good that it's a buzzword because then companies become aware of it. They start building these models, and you will see a lot of great companies inventing great org structures. And really, I think it requires a restructure of the org. I think you need to think a bit more out of the box. You cannot stick with this like marketing, sales, customer success, product. That's the traditional sales-led model, right?
Right.
Let's look at all those functions together and see if I should redistribute those functions. What do I really need in this new world, right? And that's going to be super interesting. I've always been a big spokesperson for merging, or to some extent merging sales and customer success, because I think the best customer success people are the ones who can do sales, and the best salespeople are the ones who can answer the customer's questions.
Absolutely.
And give proper support. So there's a lot of overlap there. It's and maybe it's inefficient to and adds complexity to have all these functions, right? Then you just get a lot of politics and stuff blocking progress. So
it just creates a disjointed customer experience if you have to have all these handoffs and things like that.
Yeah.
Well, this is a good conversation because, I think like you said, product-led growth is a bit of a buzzword right now. So even having someone like yourself come on and provide some definition around what product-led means, what the future could look like. All the questions aren't answered yet, but we're starting to move in this direction. I think it's super, super valuable. So thanks for running everybody through that. Why don't you give the audience a quick background? Where can we find you? Where can we find your company? What else do we need to know?
So Userflow is on very easy, userflow.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Esben Friis-Jensen. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm also very active in a community called Product-led, which is productled.com. It's a great guy called Wes Bush who wrote a book on product-led growth, actually, and he also made this community. And so if you are very interested in product-led growth, I highly recommend joining that Slack community. There's a lot of great questions being answered in there. And I'm also very active in there. So those are the best places to find me.
I love it. Userflow.com, find Esben on LinkedIn, and then productledgrowth.com. Is that what it was?
Productled.com.
Productled.com. Perfect. Well, all those links will be in the show notes. If you enjoyed listening to me and Esben, give us a review on your very good podcast app. Esben, thanks for joining the show. It's great to have you.